Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're here. There's football on field.
Yep. No
Green
pads
Bay
yet,
elsewhere.
but we're on the field.
No pads.
We're getting
Pads.
something
Still a
to
couple
talk
days
about.
pads.
We're no longer having
maybe Nate Hobbs thinks there are pads.
I was going to say, apparently laid a hit on Dontavian Wicks today. But yeah, we finally have some actual football-related content to talk about. We don't need to just, conjecture and projections and who's going to be the best in the division based on, what last year.
Right now we know for sure, right?
Of course, exactly. We actually have some stuff this year to talk about, though. We don't need to necessarily only reference last year. But like you mentioned, Packers are in the heat of training camp. All training camps around the league have now started. There were a few that started last week, but the Packers are one of them. They have begun. They are 3 days into training camp. And so we are here today to talk about our first takeaways from the first few days of training camp. Now, we're only 3 days in. Pads don't come on until Sunday. We're recording this Friday the 25th for those of you listening in the future. But so we're here to talk about, our early takeaways from the first few days of training camp. Before we get into any of that, just thank you to all of the lovely reporters who are keeping us updated on everything and anything Packers at this time. Without you doing your work on the ground, we wouldn't know, any of this stuff and have any of this to talk about. So shout out to all the lovely reporters, the beat reporters who are out there, doing the Lord's work, bringing us this information. But Dad, so training camp fever, how are you feeling? Are you excited? Is this sating enough of the football appetite? Is it just a little amuse-bouche? How are you feeling about it?
It's more like just a little teaser, but it is. I'm excited about seeing players in the field. Some exciting looking plays. A little bit we can see.
A little bit that has been smuggled out, a couple videos that have been taken by the fans. Shout out to the fans as well for getting those videos that they're not supposed to have, but we love them. Yes,
risky getting kicked out for us.
Yes, for the people, for the people. But yeah, so we
bring it to you. The people.
But we have, a good amount to talk about today. Not a ton. It's only 3 days worth of practices. And, like we preface all of this, it's very early in camp. There's still a lot that players are working on. So a lot of this is if a player makes a mistake, we'll talk about it a little bit. Or if a player's having some trouble doing stuff, or if the offense is having trouble on certain concepts, we're going to talk about it. But it's also important to keep in mind through the lens of they're still working on this stuff. It's still very early in camp. There's still a lot of room to grow and a lot of time to grow before week one. So, and a lot of this stuff is players trying things, players working on stuff. It's okay, this did work. Okay, this didn't work. Just because they're struggling at something doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be bad at it going into the season, but we are still going to talk about it. But before we get into any of that, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review. We would appreciate it, whether that's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, any podcast platform of your choice. Leave a comment, tell a friend, et cetera, et cetera. Follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on these training camp practices and, Packers roster moves, when we have new episodes out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'd really appreciate it, keeping you up to date on everything Packers related. Yeah, so that's the usual spiel. If you've heard this, I'm sure you've heard this before, but anyway, figured we'd run through it. But Dad, before we get into talking about training camp and what's been going on at training camp, we do have some pieces of news since the last time we talked. And I think we might as well start with the biggest one, which is Zach Tom extended. Packers right tackle, we kind of talked about this in our training camp preview the week before, was hey, are we going to get some contract news either on one of the tackles or on Elton before, training camp officially started? And we did get one of the tackles. So Zach Tom signs a 4-year, $88 million deal with the ability to get up to 92 with some incentives. Makes him the third highest paid right tackle in the league per Spot Track. Good deal for Green Bay, I think, on its face, though, Dad. What did you think when you saw this deal sign?
I actually thought he was going to get more. So this is kind of the range I thought maybe Rasheed Walker would get.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy. I think it was a good deal for the Packers.
Well, especially when you look at just the going rate for when these offensive linemen hit free agency. So I almost feel bad doing this because this is always the guy that people point out where it's oh yeah, that guy's mediocre and he got paid a lot. But Dan Moore, who signed with the Titans this offseason as a left tackle. So there is some hey, he plays on the left side, Tom plays on the right side. But I think at this point in the NFL, those guys left and right is pretty much equally valuable. So I don't think that's necessarily that big a deal. But anyway, Dan Moore, who I think is, most people would consider about an average left tackle, maybe slightly below average, a little worse than Rasheed Walker, got $20 million a year. So for Zach Tom to get only $2 million more per year than that, I think is fantastic work for Green Bay. Obviously, very happy for Zach Tom as well. He's been a really good player for Green Bay the past few years, has, I think, been their best offensive lineman the past handful of years. And it's good for him to, get that money in his pocket. Good for the Packers to get this worked out before training camp. I think good for everyone involved. But yeah, I think just a good deal. And, just good to get one of those two tackles locked up long term.
Yeah, I wanted this to be done before the season. Not wait, not let it drag out. There's some others that maybe want to get done as well, but this was maybe the number, in my mind, the number one priority contract for this year.
Yes, I agree, because obviously you want to get the offensive line worked out, and maybe you could argue getting Elton worked out would have been also a big priority. But in terms of getting a future extension done, I think that Tom was definitely the priority. He's been a mainstay at right tackle for the past several years. He's been very consistent at that right tackle spot. I mean, Will Anderson of the Texans said that he was the best tackle he went against last year, and he had trouble with him. But yeah, so he's a guy who's hasn't had the accolades of some of these other tackles, hasn't made a Pro Bowl, hasn't made an All-Pro, but I think is one of the best guys in the league who hasn't gotten those accolades. And so for him to come in at $22 million a year, I think is really good value for the Packers, good deal for Tom, and so that's awesome. I don't think any other thoughts on that other than it's good for them to get it done before training camp and not have to deal with it while practices are going on. So yeah. That's awesome for Tom.
While he was in the air in the plane, he landed and got the news when he landed in Green Bay.
That's great news to land to. Beyond that, though, other Packers-related news, some roster moves. Released kicker Alex Hale, who had been their International Pathway Program player, some kind of weird freak eye injury, which, we're probably never going to hear any more from that. Hopefully he's okay. But yeah, so they released him, and then they signed kicker Mark McNamee, who is a former Gaelic football player from Ireland. Not with the team yet. Apparently he's dealing with some visa issues, but they're hoping to bring him back or bring him to Green Bay.
Tom Silverstein, he was in Canada and had to go back to Ireland to deal with his visa and hasn't made it to Green Bay yet.
Yeah. And then they also signed wide receiver Will Shepherd, who was an UDFA from this class. Kind of just a depth piece probably for camp, but I guess we'll see. Maybe he'll have a chance to make the roster. I mean, he's getting in at the start of camp at least, so it's not totally impossible for him.
Right.
And then
signed
today,
get signed last week of camp kind of signing.
Exactly. And then today, the Packers were awarded running back Izzy Abanikanda off of waivers. Previously had been with the Jets and the Niners. Really athletic guy. I think it's going to be tough for him, though. I don't know what you think, Dad, but the running back room is just so jam-packed, right?
It is stacked with talent. Guys who seem to, they go in there and they play well. And they've added guys this year already to the room. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen there for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be a fight for a spot on the practice squad. I don't see any of the new guys beating out any of the top four, with that being, Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, Emmanuel Wilson, and Chris Brooks. But I mean, you never know. We'll see.
They'll probably still carry somebody on the practice squad even beyond those four.
Yeah. Other news, Nathaniel Hackett is back on staff, but he is going to be a consultant for the defense. Now, you might remember Robert Saleh did something similar for the offense last year, where he was kind of bringing a defensive perspective. Luke Getsy also did this for the Packers last year, where he was bringing an offensive perspective to the defense, and Saleh was doing defensive perspective for the offense. But yeah, Nathaniel Hackett is back, which is obviously great. I mean, it didn't go well for him in his last two stops, but I think everyone agrees he was good vibes around the Packers. Seems like a good dude. Everyone seems to like him.
The gold zone.
The gold zone. That was the best red zone offense the Packers have maybe ever had, or at least in the last 15 years. So he was contributing to the Packers then, and so I think it's just good to have him back, because he's been a good assistant for the Packers before, and so bringing him back is obviously seems like it could be good. Luke Getsy did that last year, and now Luke Getsy has a more permanent position with the Packers, and so now Nathaniel Hackett's hopping into that position. So he's going to be around the team throughout the season. And then officially, today was the last day for Mark Murphy as president of the Packers, as the shareholders meeting was conducted. And now Ed Policy is going to take over. So, kind of a send off for Mark Murphy, a thank you to Mark Murphy for all of the great work he did as president of the Packers. Just so many great things, bringing the draft to Green Bay. I mean, his legacy is going to be, immortal forever in Green Bay, as, president of the Packers did an awesome job throughout the years.
Yeah, I think I saw somebody call this Mark Murphy Day.
Yeah, as it should be. He should be celebrated. He did a lot of great work for Green Bay, really furthered the Packers. Really, he did a great job as president of the Packers. So figured we'd shout him out on his last day. It is Mark Murphy Day. So yeah, shout out to Mark Murphy. Enjoy your retirement, sir. Enjoy the golf. Enjoy, whatever comes with that.
You want to get something that's like really, really, really tangentially Packers adjacent. Shamar Stewart has apparently just signed with the Bengals. And so now they can afford to trade away their other edge rusher.
I guess.
How's that for going out on a tangent?
My take is I wouldn't do it if I was Green Bay. That's my take. Because you got to sign him then give him the TJ Watt deal.
They got $30 million in cap space.
Yeah, but you're giving up a second and $30 million a year for a guy who's like 30. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I would do it. This is my takeaway.
An all-in move.
That is an all-in move. Moving on to something a little less positive. We do have some injury updates from camp so far. We already talked about the ones who had been put on the PUP list, been put on the NFI list. But 2 players did come off, so that's at least some good news. Micah Robinson and Quay Walker, both were, activated off the PUP list. Micah Robinson is practicing. Quay Walker is still kind of working his way back, still rehabbing, but so not doing team drills yet, but he is at least making his way back, so that's some good news. However, some bad news. Aaron Banks did kind of hurt his back a little bit, it sounds like LaFleur said. Now, LaFleur also said it was minor and he's going to be day-to-day, but he did sit out team drills yesterday and sat out all of practice today, so hopefully it's not long-term, but he's missing some time right now. Savion Williams missed practice today, Friday, with a concussion, according to Ryan Wood. Maybe hurt it, trying to get that diving catch on Thursday. Hard to know. But so he missed practice today. Hopefully not going to take too long, we'll hope. And then Dontavian Wicks took a hit from Nate Hobbs in team drills. Hopefully nothing too major. He did stay, down for a little bit, but then he got back up and participated in the rest of practice. So there is at least that.
And I think he said he was fine after practice was over.
Yeah. But with all of that, Dad, any last bits of news that I might have missed that you saw that you wanted to touch on? Or should we go over like our, takeaways from the first few days of training camp and talk about, what we've liked that we've seen, maybe not what we've liked that we've seen, but like what has kind of drawn our eye so far, what we're keeping an eye on through 3 days? Because we did have our, things we're keeping our eye on, episode last week. And so I kind of built off of that, like, those are the things I'm keeping my eye on. And these are my takeaways through 3 days. Obviously, like we already mentioned, first 3 days, no pads. They don't come on until Sunday. Players are still working on stuff. A lot of the negatives need to be kept through the, context, the lens of like, hey, these players are working on things. It's early in camp. There is like stuff that they're like just trying stuff. So like they might be, just seeing what they can get away with, even if like something doesn't go well. It doesn't necessarily mean, I think Richard Sherman the other day was like, it'd be like if you wrote an article, like a rough draft, and then it got published, like is what like looking at practice reps is like, yeah, it's got some commas aren't there. The punctuation isn't great. There's some spelling mistakes, but it's a rough draft. Like that's what practice is. Practice is a rough draft. You're working on stuff. So like, just keep all of that in mind when we're talking about like what's been going on in training camp so far, I guess.
Yeah. So I'll start with something I think we wanted to keep an eye on going into training camp. That's the offensive line.
I mean, we might talk about this for 20 minutes here. Like we might talk about the offensive line for maybe the entire
episode. We might talk about
this
now. Every week for the rest of the offseason and possibly into the season. So there are a couple battles of like, particularly where's Jordan Morgan going to be?
Yeah.
Is he going to be in the starting lineup? Is he going to be at guard? Is he going to be at left tackle? Supposedly competing with Walker at left tackle is where they wanted to be. But so far, these first three days, Walker seems well ahead of Morgan at left tackle.
Yeah. It seems like the main lineup when Banks was out there was Walker left tackle, Banks left guard, Ryan center, Morgan right guard, and Tom right tackle. And so we can talk a little bit about what we think that means, but that's been it so far. Morgan did get a little work at left tackle today, a bit, but it's mostly been right guard for him, and then a little left guard with Banks out today.
Yeah, and he got a little bit of left tackle, I think, on day one, but it seems like the vast majority of his snaps have been at right guard. And Walker has been first at left tackle every day. Yeah.
And so let's start talking about that left tackle spot, because Matt LaFleur said a couple things that were interesting there. He did say that they're going to be cross-training Jordan Morgan at guard and tackle. So he did say that, even though it's mostly been Morgan at guard. And so we'll see, maybe he gets more tackle work as camp goes on. That's possible. But Matt LaFleur did say they're going to cross-train him. And then Matt LaFleur did say about Rasheed Walker, who, we've mentioned many times, but is a free agent after this year. But Matt LaFleur said, quote, "Yeah, I think there's been some really good moments, and I think there's some moments where we expect more. He's certainly capable, and he's shown the capabilities, and I think that's why we have high expectations for him. I think for him, it's just the consistency to do it down in and down out." So it seems like Matt LaFleur thinks like he's a fine left tackle, but maybe not like a high-end left tackle. And so it's kind of weird because like the way Matt LaFleur talks about it, you feel like there would be more competition at that left tackle spot with like Morgan and Walker rotating. And then you get to practice and it's like, okay, it's mostly only Walker at left tackle. So I don't know. What do you make of that?
For me, it seems like so reminiscent of last summer. It's like, okay, we'll bring in Morgan. He's going to be competing at tackle. And then he's like immediately put into the guard competition and not competing for tackle. He's playing maybe a little bit more tackle this training camp so far. It's early. Maybe it'll be more later. And maybe some of it has to do with Jenkins not being there and shuffling the interior around a little bit. But that doesn't necessarily make sense. If you want to, if you think he's going to be your tackle, you just put a backup in there. So it's I don't know. They seem to never be quite sad. Walker's sort of like the anti Josh Myers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they keep talking about how he's not doing a good enough job, and he keeps going out there and winning the job over and over again, as opposed to playing the best football of his career, and nobody wants to sign him when he's a free agent.
Well, okay, and so I think one angle though that you could look at it and it maybe makes some sense is they always talk about best five, and I think one of my takeaways from the offensive line rotation so far is the amount that Ryan is playing at center. He's like almost exclusively been center so far. And that kind of indicates to me like the fact that they're not having him work at right guard very much kind of makes me think that they think that Ryan is the sixth guy. Because if they thought he was going to be one of their starters, they'd be trying to get him reps at the spot he'd be playing at. Because Elton's going to be the starter at center when he's able to come back from that back injury or when they give him the contract, whichever it is, we don't really know. But like he's listed with a back injury right now. So, and they've said that it's a real back injury and it's not a contract thing. And so like when they expect him to be back within a week, and that when he's back, he's going to be back out there practicing. That's what Brian Gutekunst said in his presser. But I guess my takeaway is,
though that statement is like, as soon as his back injury clears up, he'll be out there.
But they also put a timetable on. They said they think about a week. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see in a week.
So that's what they think they'll be back out there or not. Negotiating.
Maybe. But then there was also that report that, they we're getting on a tangent here, but there was also that report that they are open to negotiating with Elton, but they want to see how he looks at center, and they're going to wait until mid-season, which is a little surprising because usually they don't like doing any kind of contract talk in the season. They've talked about not liking doing that before, so I don't know. It's a bit of a thing right now where it's a little mysterious. It's a little bit murky. But just to circle back to Morgan and Ryan, I think that if they thought Ryan was a starter, they'd be wanting to play him at the spot he was going to be starting at. And so the fact that he's been mostly at center, where we pretty much assume Elton's going to be, like that Ryan's not going to be at center, kind of makes me think that they don't think Ryan is a starter. And so maybe they just thinking, okay, best five, Walker's better than Ryan. And so Morgan's going to play at guard. And so Morgan's going to battle it out at guard there. And so maybe that's the takeaway is like if you look at it from the angle of like, we just want to get our best five guys out there, that's why Morgan's getting more guard work than tackle work. And Ryan playing at center indicates they think he's a backup. And so they're going to need a starting guard. I don't know. Maybe that's or maybe when Elton's back, they're like, okay, hey, we know Elton's not out there. We're definitely not playing anyone but Morgan or Ryan at guard. So let's just have him get all his guard snaps in now. And then when Elton comes back, we'll have Ryan at guard, and then we can rotate tackle a little bit more. Maybe that's also what's happening.
Right. That's the thing. It could be that they'll rotate more. Though they could have gone, Monk at center.
They could have.
Yeah. You say like, it's just like, okay, we're going to put Monk at center as our like backup center. Doesn't have any, they messed with that a little bit as well today.
Yeah.
And then I have like Morgan competing, splitting time competing with Ryan and Walker.
And
but
right
so
guard,
far it's been mostly he's been competing with,
And
taking most of the snaps. So I think there's some merit to your idea that Ryan is further down the depth chart as training basically to be the fill
backup
in at
swing
all
interior guy. Yeah.
swing interior guy. Exactly.
Yeah. Because also today, I think I saw when they brought Monk in, it was at guard, right?
Well, they started. So today with Banks out, Monk was in at guard at the beginning, and then later they switched and had Monk go to center and Ryan go to right guard, with Morgan at left guard in for Banks.
Yeah, so I think it's just going to be really interesting to keep an eye on, and obviously it's still very early. It's 3 days into camp, and when Elton comes back, when Elton comes back, I think this might all completely change, and we might see more snaps at tackle for Morgan. But I think my early takeaway is with the amount of center Ryan's getting, I think he's going to be the backup swing interior guy. And then because otherwise they would have just been like, okay, we'll pop Monk into center and Ryan can still get some work at the spot he's going to be playing at full time. And then Morgan would rotate in there. But like you said, I think the fact that they brought Monk in just today when Banks was out and had him play a little guard initially makes me even more think that Ryan is, because like if you're already bringing in a guy who's not going to be a starter, who is Monk, which we presume at least is not going to be a starter, you might as well have played him in the spot. Like you might as well have let Ryan play in the spot he was going to start if you thought he was a starter. We're tying ourselves in knots over this. Like I'm getting all spaghetti-y here, but I think my takeaway is I think this kind of indicates they maybe think Ryan's the swing interior guy. Morgan's going to start at guard. But maybe when Eldon's back, we get some rotation with Morgan at tackle.
I mean, like they really want to get Ryan some center reps for whatever theory you want to put out for that he's a cheap center of the future.
That would involve re-signing him, though, and I don't think they want to do that.
Right, but it would be cheap.
Would it? I don't know if it would be.
Yeah,
because we've seen these guards.
If he's not starting this year, it'll be cheaper.
Fair enough. But we've seen these guards around the league get paid more than you expect, right? Like.
Yeah. The other funny thing about this whole interior offensive line, like when Banks first missed time in day 2, the guy who first came in was
Travis Glover, which is so odd.
Which is very weird.
Well,
instead of having Monk come in.
Before we get to that, is there anything else you wanted to talk about from the Morgan, Ryan, Walker point of view, Elton point of view? Any of those 4 guys that you want? Because I think just to sum it up, we think when Elton's back, he's going to be the center. I think when Elton's back, we might see some more snaps at tackle for Morgan. But right now, the fact that Morgan's getting those right guard ones and Ryan's getting the center kind of makes me think Ryan's the interior swing. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on there, or should we talk about Glover and Monk?
Yeah, I think to sum it up, like Walker seems to be ahead of Morgan at tackle, and Morgan seems to be ahead of Ryan at guard.
Yeah, I think that's my takeaway as well. All right, let's talk about Glover a little bit because, like I said, we might do this whole episode just on the offensive line. But anyway, the weird thing was, like we said, Glover came in and got snaps with the ones at left guard, which, keep in mind, John Williams, who they took in the 7th round this year, is expected to... Oh, that was another thing we forgot to mention. That's expected to take some time, apparently. He has a back injury as well, and he's expected to miss probably a good chunk of camp, it sounds like. And then the other update that we didn't mention was Colin Oliver, who we mentioned was on the PUP list, or the NFI list, I guess. No, PUP list. He's expected to miss at least a few weeks with that hamstring injury. But John Williams is expected to miss, I think Brian Gutekunst said, a good chunk of time with a back injury. So we'll see if he's able to get back even by the end of camp. I guess we won't know. But anyway, to circle back to Glover. But that's like one less guy competing for that spot right now. But Glover snaps with the ones at left guard. Maybe a little surprising, given that the last time we saw him out there, he was benched for Kadeem Telfort in the playoffs. Thoughts on that? Thoughts that he's the next guy up at left guard there?
Yeah, it's interesting that they keep putting him at guard, and not. I don't know if he's getting any tackle reps or not. He's in some ways kind of built more like a tackle, being a taller guy. It was a little surprising, and then they didn't stick with it today. So that was like their initial was to put him in for Banks, and then they did more shuffling and didn't have him in there with the ones. Today they went with Monk instead. And it was surprising they didn't go with Monk yesterday.
Do you think it is at all like how they have sometimes they just have a guy in with the ones to spell them so that like the guys who are actually the backups get more reps with the twos. Like we've talked about before with like some linebackers, some corners, like Gregory Jr. earlier this year is like, yeah, he's with the ones, but he's mostly just like giving the guys a breather. Like Travis Glover's with the ones, but he's giving the guys a breather.
And
Donovan Jennings was with the ones like over in back in minicamp, and Matt LaFleur didn't even know that. Like maybe it's one of those things.
And maybe that's what happened yesterday, because the splits, the groups were already made 1, 2, 3, and so the guy that was available with the ones was Glover. I mean, I don't actually know, but that's one speculation. He was the easiest to insert with the ones, and so with starting from the beginning of practice, they were able to rearrange who was with the ones, who was with the twos, who was with the threes. I don't know. I'm kind of,
it's also. I mean, we're living in speculation. I mean, we're 3 days into camp. This is prime time for speculation. Like that's what we're here for. Like, and then I think they asked Matt LaFleur about whether like what Travis Glover has to do to like regain trust, I guess, after getting benched in the playoff game. And Matt LaFleur kind of shut that down. It's like, oh, like he just needs to stay in the moment and like focus on the here and the now, like a bunch of coach speak pretty much. But so I guess they're not like looking at it through the lens of he needs to like regain his spot after that, those reps against the Eagles in the playoffs didn't go very well, So, but anyway, that's pretty much all the only real thought I have on Glover. I'm just a little surprised he's getting those reps, but yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to mention was their new lineman this year, Belton.
Yeah, Anthony Belton, second rounder out of NC State, if you missed it.
And a lot of people thought he was going to be a guard. He seems to mostly be playing tackle so far this offseason and into training camp. He was in left tackle with the second unit and right tackle with the third and fourth groups per Tom Silverstein. When the brief times that Morgan was in a left tackle, I think we had Belton sometimes at right tackle in some of those groups. And so it's kind of like Morgan is doing like seems to be morphing more into guard, and Belton, who they thought was going to be an interior offensive lineman, has so far been mostly playing at tackle. Just thought I'd mention that. And, it doesn't look like he's going to get playing time anytime soon.
Not with the ones.
At those positions, going to be maybe he'll be the swing tackle.
A lot of camp left
this year.
Yeah, a lot of camp left, so no real way to know. I like that they're cross-training him left and right tackle. That kind of indicates that they see him next up at tackle to me, maybe.
Right. They could be training, as a swing tackle that could come in on either side when needed.
Yeah. So, like, right now, I would, if you had to, like, truth serum me into getting what the, starting five and the next two guys would be, I would guess it would be Walker, Banks, Elton, Morgan, Tom, and interior swing, backup, Sean Ryan, tackle backup.
Any of the three spots inside.
Yeah, any of the three spots. And then tackle backup would then be Anthony Belton. So, like, that's kind of my thought right now on the offensive line. Are you kind of feeling the same way?
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. That seems like the most likely scenario so far.
Yeah, right. And so that's kind of the takeaway through the first 3 days on the O-line. Is there anything else offensive line that you wanted to discuss, or should we kind of move on to our next bit?
I can move on to the next bit. The rest is getting really murky about
very murky.
Who's lining up where in the second, third, and whatever groups you want to call them, because each group has their own backups within them. So then it gets
really we get layers and layers and layers. Yeah,
bifurcating timelines.
Exactly. I think the first thing that I wanted to touch on is just the passing game, because it's kind of something we've talked about, how the passing game was like not quite good enough last year, need to be more consistent. And so I figure we just like chat about it a little bit, and we could also kind of talk about the wide receivers and how that's stacking up as well. Early on, it seems like there's some struggles connecting on the deep ball. Remember, it's still really early in camp. They did hit, Jordan Love did hit Wicks on a deep post today for a 50-yard touchdown, so that's good. But they did have some issues, a couple deep passes to Jacobs one was dropped, one was overthrown, and then a deep pass to Savion Williams. This one was from Malik Willis, though, that he dove for and wasn't able to come up with. And then a deep pass to Dobbs today before the Wicks one from Love that was underthrown. Just something I think where, just keep an eye on it as, the camp goes to, like, they need to work out the kinks still, it feels like. And remember that, without Christian Watson, I think there's just like a void there on the deep passing game that they're just going to have to take some time to figure out, filling in that spot, because, Watson, according to PFF, accounted for 23% of the team's deep targets, and that's defined as 20 plus air yards last year. And he had the second highest catch rate on the team amongst players with at least 10 deep targets. So just volume wise, there's a lot to, replace there. And also efficiency wise, there's a lot to replace there. And so like, I'm kind of keeping my eye on the deep passing game as something they need to work out. Because right now they're having a little trouble connecting, but again, early on in camp, so nothing to really worry about, but just something to keep an eye on, because without Watson, I think there is something where they need to work out that chemistry with the other players. Beyond that, wide receiver wise, Golden, Wicks, and Hardman are standing out early, apparently. Each of them having pretty good days so far. Hardman's the interesting one there because he was kind of a roster bubble guy, but it seems like he's kind of working his way into the fold of like being more and more likely to make the team, in my opinion. And then the other thing was just didn't seem like I'd heard much of any real gadget touches for Savion Williams yet. Mostly just him working as a regular receiver and then didn't practice today. But Golden was getting some end around touches, which I thought was maybe a little bit interesting. But Dad, any thoughts on the receivers, the passing game so far? How they're being used, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it seems like, apparently Golden looked really nice in the open field in some of those catches, with some showing some wiggle.
Yep.
Getting, basically getting downfield on what would essentially be flag football.
Yeah, two-hand touch, and they couldn't get him. So yeah,
and Wicks has been looking pretty good, I think, on at least a number of plays. Though he had his first drop today, I think, but has been getting open and looking good with the ball. I think he's caught a pass and outran McKinney to the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the drop was.
That was maybe it was broken.
It sounds like Hobbs was there maybe a little too physical as well for a practice without pads. Apparently, Matt LaFleur was like, "Hey, we don't have pads on. You can't be smacking our receivers in the middle of the field. Like we're all in the same team here." But yeah, so that one I'm willing to give him some accident forgiveness for. But I think for Wicks, it's really all about confidence. I feel like for him,
yeah. I mean, what I've been seeing so far look like pretty clean catches, not like double catches or anything like that. So hopefully that holds up.
Yeah, but I think the, converse for the passing game maybe having some struggle connecting at times. Although, there's still some big plays, like they hit the Wicks one. They've had some other very positive plays. Golden's look good. But the pass defense, the secondary, has apparently really shown out so far in camp. And obviously, it's early in camp, which usually means the defense is ahead of the offense. So you kind of expect this at this point. But still, good to see that, a group that I think a lot of people had questions about is playing pretty well right now.
Yeah. If I want to move on, should we go on to the next?
That was me. That was me throwing the alley-oop.
Because that's one of my things. Like
that's what we call a segue, baby.
Did I bobble it?
Yes, you did. I was going to say I was throwing it off the glass, and you just like.
I wasn't sure if I was going to jump in, and you weren't ready to transition to the next one yet. But I have that as my thing. Defense is ahead of the offense. And the offense has been doing push-ups at least days 2 and 3. I wasn't quite sure what happened on day 1.
I think day 1, the offense won.
I think
I remember seeing that the offense
But they've
won
had the defense is forcing turnovers. Like Valentine has 2 interceptions so far. Tight coverage on Golden reported.
Almost had a third as well, apparently.
Almost had a third. McKinney has, I think, had an interception on day 1, had another one that he could have had, that he almost had against covering Kraft. They forced fumbles. I think they forced one from Kraft.
Bullard punched one out of Kraft, I think, and Hobbs punched one out. Hobbs has looked good, apparently. Has had a lot of pass breakups. Has been really, I guess he's got a lot of energy, apparently.
I mean, I've got Hobbs as a kind of a separate thing, but I just talk about him now since we're bringing it up. It's like, he seems like a very intense player. He's like calling himself out for jumping offside of a play, and then apologize to teammates. I can make it up. So then he goes out and gets the pass breakup on 3rd down on the next play to force the punt.
You know who else had this energy? Is Rasul Douglas. Feels a little Rasul Douglas-y, because Rasul Douglas had that same really intense in every single practice kind of energy. And I think it helps the defense to have that. But yeah, apparently he's had a really nice camp so far through 3 days. Obviously still early, but has had a really nice camp so far. Bullard has looked good, apparently, working more in the slot. And we talked about, how we thought he was going to be used. It seems like he's pretty much exclusively been in the slot so far, and a little bit of safety, but mostly the slot in those base downs. And then in some of the other nickel packages, it's been Valentine coming in and then kicking. Was it kicking Hobbs or Nixon down into the slot?
Hobbs to the slot. Hobbs to the slot. Though there was a play that was reported where Oladapo got in the slot.
I saw that too. Which is fun because he's huge for a slot, comically large. But still, hey, the more you can do, and I think we saw last year, and admittedly very few snaps for him. he flashed a little bit, that he can play. And I mean, it's a little bit of a logjam like at that safety spot, but if he can maybe be able to back up multiple positions, maybe he can get on the field a little bit earlier. But yeah, so it seems like the secondary's looking good. Nixon apparently gave up his first catch of camp so far today, so like that he's playing well as well. But yeah, so him, Hobbs, Valentine, multiple picks, Bullard looking better in the slot. I think he broke up a pass to Kraft in the flat, I think it was. But yeah, looking good so far along the secondary. McKinney McKinney plays, doing his usual thing. Haven't heard much from Evan Williams, but hey, maybe that's a good thing. But yeah, so look, and apparently Evan Williams is looking good. I'm not saying like, that he's looking bad, but just he hasn't been giving up. He hasn't been giving up catches either. So, there's that.
Yeah, it seems like he and McKinney have like the starting safety spots kind of
locked up. Yeah. And I mean, they were so good as a duo last year that like you just expect them to have it locked up. But yeah, it does sound like they have those two spots, pretty much locked down right now.
Yeah. And you want to talk about the other end of the defense? The front of the defense?
Yeah, we'll talk about the front a little bit. The edge rushers, it's pretty much been mostly LVN. Like, this was another thing we talked about in the training camp preview, was like, is there any way that LVN gets pushed for that, number 2 spot? Through 3 practices, it's mostly been him there, but Brenton Cox has kind of, I think, cemented himself as at least the 3 and has gotten some snaps at that second spot, mostly in walkthroughs. In the actual 2-minute drills, it's almost exclusively been LVN, but Cox has gotten, he's seems to have passed an Ngbare and, has maybe started to push LVN for that number 2 spot. Obviously, I think the trench stuff, like how they're like at this point, it's mostly about how they're lining up, not how they're playing, because without pads, like it really doesn't matter as much. It's hard to really glean anything. But Cox seems to be, working his way up the depth chart how we hoped he would. But other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot to take away. That's like the main takeaway from the edge stuff.
I'm going to mention it anyway, though.
Okay, go ahead.
LVN got some apparently a couple pressures today, and Sorrell got some reps at edge and pressured Willis, and also lined up inside. So they're testing out his versatility to line up in different positions on the field.
Yeah, I mean they are a little bit light at D tackle right now in terms of behind Kenny and
literally
Wyatt.
Light.
So yeah, also yes. So yeah, the more you can do. I think they're probably going to do that with Sorrell. They're probably going to do that with LVN as well. Probably with Gary a little bit too. I think they're probably going to work out that stuff, as like all that stuff pretty much.
Yeah, but yeah, that D tackle depth, I haven't heard anything
from any of the D tackles,
Brinson or Stackhouse.
I haven't heard anything about any of the D tackles at all. But that's what I'm saying. Like early on,
yeah, maybe not. There's just maybe not a single post about
any of
Kenny
them,
or Wyatt.
But that's the thing. It's like everyone likes to say they're playing patty cake up there. Like they're just like they're not actually trying to get past them. Really, there was like one, but yeah, it's hard to have any takeaways until the pads go on. But we'll have pads on Sunday, so maybe after that we'll get some real thoughts on what's going on there.
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery, because so much of it is power on power. Exactly. And if you're not able to allowed to run into each other full force, what does it really mean?
Mm-hmm. Other things, maybe we'll talk about the linebackers a little bit. It seems like it's Simmons ahead of Hopper, and he's played pretty well, I guess. He had one tip that turned into a Valentine interception. He tipped a pass. He's been, I think, pretty clearly ahead of Tyron Hopper so far for that 4th linebacker spot. I think it's probably Quay's not practicing right now, so it's been Cooper, McDuffie, and Simmons. I kind of assume that McDuffie is ahead of Simmons, although we don't know that for sure. But Simmons has been very clearly ahead of Hopper so far.
Yeah, and everybody's saying he's looking good, and maybe they found the role for him. That will best take advantage of his, skill set. Yeah,
they're playing him on the strong side. And, Matt LaFleur was asked about whether or not he thought that was his best position. And he was like, yeah, no, we think that's, where he probably fits the best. But he also talked about, he thought he was a really versatile piece and could maybe do, a little bit of slot stuff. And so, yeah. And so I almost wonder if maybe they see him as one of those college football overhang defenders, that kind of I mean, it's a little different with the hashes being a lot narrower, but maybe they see him as like playing a little bit more in space, like with his athleticism. I don't know. But he certainly seems to be like the next guy up at linebacker after those first three to me.
Yeah. If it ended up being like Cooper, Walker, and Simmons,
Speed.
That is a crazy amount of speed in that middle level of the defense.
But I will say, McDuffie's not slow.
No, he's
like
not slow.
He's got decent speed. It's not like Simmons, but it's not like Simmons or Cooper who are like, I mean, warp speed. But like he's got decent speed for a linebacker, and he's a little undersized, so you'd hope so. But yeah. Moving down the list, what's the next thing that you wanted to talk about?
So, I guess to get back to the secondary, Bo Melton is actually not looked out of place at quarterback. I think
that was the other thing. He is now number 16, and he is officially a corner. Like officially
on
a
the
corner.
Website, he's listed corner, so now he's a corner who maybe will play a little bit of wide receiver in an emergency. But I think he's got a chance to be, not counting if you want to say Bullard is something else. He has a chance to be the corner 4. I think he's in the competition. His back pedal looks good in the drills. It sounds like he's getting a decent amount of reps with the 2s in the team periods where he's making plays, covering. I mean, he hung with like Golden for a while before they finally completed that pass to him. It was extended play, but he's and he got a pass breakup on, I think, Savion Williams reported and some other plays. So I think he's, not looking like a fish out of water.
The fact that he played this position, I think, a little bit at Rutgers in college. He played
in high school. I don't remember if freshman year, maybe he played a little bit of corner still.
But so
he called up his brother for advice.
I was going to say, it is funny what we already talked about, but his brother didn't hear about it until he saw it in the news. But anyway, so I think that this also, the Bo Melton, the corner thing kind of is part of why I think McCole Hardman is more likely to make the team, especially with how McCole Hardman is playing, where it's they're very similar players when they're both at receiver, where they're kind of gadget touch special teamers. And
I was looking at their profiles,
very similar.
Their 40 time is 100th of a second different.
I was gonna say Bo Melton probably outweighs them by 10 pounds though, right?
6.
Yeah.
Only 6 pounds. Their height difference is 3/4 of an inch. 1 different on the bench, 1.5 on the vert, 1 inch on the broad.
They're
Bo
very
has a better
players.
Short shuttle, but Hardman has a better 3-cone. It's incredible. When I looked at the side by side, it's oh man, these guys are almost identical.
Yeah, and so I think moving Bo Melton to corner maybe lets them keep both of them. I think they like both of the players a lot. So I think Bo moving to corner and not looking lost is definitely that's all you can ask at this point. And he has all of camp to really settle in there.
I think hopefully he's got a decent chance to. It's pass Kalen King and Haddon and the guys fighting for the 4 and 5 spots.
Here's a question.
He's got a chance.
Here's a question. With him moving to corner, who has a better chance of making the team? Him or Malik Heath?
He does.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, right?
I just don't see that with Hardman seeming to have leapt over both Melton and Heath, that I don't see how any of these other guys. It's what is it, spot 8? Watson comes back?
Yeah, but without Watson, it's Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Savion Williams, McCole Hardman, and then Malik Heath? Wide receiver 7, right?
Wide receiver 7 until Watson comes back.
Yeah. And so I think Heath will make the practice squad for sure.
Yeah, they'll have him on the practice squad. But in terms of the 53, I just don't think they'll carry 7.
Yeah, I would be surprised too, especially if they end up keeping 4 running backs. Which, unless you had anything more you wanted to touch on there, was the last thing I was going to really talk about in detail before maybe we hit some odds and ends. Is running back. We were seeing some Marshawn Lloyd, and that was something that was in my what to look for in training camp. Marshawn Lloyd got some reps with the ones. Is competing for that running back 2 job. It looks like. And so he looked good in day one. Apparently, had an explosive run, brings that home run threat that the other backs don't necessarily bring. At the same time, though, Chris Brooks has also apparently looked good in camp so far and is kind of doing all like the dirty work stuff and is getting some reps with the ones as well. Haven't heard Emmanuel Wilson's name as much, but we saw how good he was last year as a backup, so I'm not necessarily concerned about that. Just haven't really heard his name as much. But the other thing for the running backs was Matt LaFleur in one of his pressers did say that Josh Jacobs' load last year is not going to have any impact on how much they give him the ball this year. And it's just going to be about, how healthy he is, how he's feeling. And he did say, like, sometimes you got to protect these guys from themselves, but it's really just about how they're doing, like, not necessarily in the moment, but like how healthy they are this year. It's not about the workload last year. So we did talk a little bit about, and me specifically, like, hey, I wonder if they're going to do a more even split with how much work he got last year. Apparently that's not going to be the case unless he ends up needing that rest. But so, maybe running back 2 isn't going to be as big of a role as we initially thought. Maybe it is if Jacobs ends up getting dinged up at some point or ends up wearing down a little bit. But yeah, so any thoughts on the running back position?
Yeah, I mean, the general trend, I would say, is not like consensus or opinion. It's actual data. Is that running backs who've had as much of a workload as Jacobs had last year not only have a lesser workload, but are also less efficient with it.
We did the numbers. It's like so, a good amount less.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be how they decide. It's like, if he seems to be, less efficient with his touches, they should scale him back.
You'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see if that turns out to be the case, but I would think so. But I also feel like teams are like, sometimes we're just going to ride this running back until the wheels fall off.
Yeah, yeah. But I think
see Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, but like I think the big thing is you don't want the wheels falling off in the playoffs. Like is my thing. Like, and that's why
what happened to the Rams with Gurley.
Yeah,
against the Patriots, the wheels fell off, and then their offense was not the same in the Super Bowl without him.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm like, maybe you should, take it easy a little bit. Although Jacobs himself, they interviewed him and they asked him like, hey, like, how are you feeling? And he's like, I feel great. He's like, actually, I felt better after the season than I usually do. He's like, usually I'm like nursing some bumps and bruises and it takes me about a month to feel like back to normal of like rest and rehabilitation. But he's like, I felt great after the season. So what did he say? He said, maybe I'm hitting my prime or something. But yeah, he said he feels ready for, a big workload again this year. So I guess we'll see. But I do also think it's like, what else is he going to say? Like, what else is he going to say? Exactly.
Players want to get on the field, but also you might say like, how bad was that run blocking on the Raiders?
Sure. I mean, it's not like our run blocking.
It wasn't like exactly.
Year,
it wasn't. So. It was fantastic on the Packers last year. So how much worse was it for the Raiders that he got even more beat up?
But I do think like I'm not necessarily putting a lot of weight in that because like what else is he going to say? Like every single player, this you can never trust. Like he's in the best shape of his life. It feels better than he's ever felt before, and so like this is like the time of the season where you can only take that with a grain of salt.
You can't trust the coaches or the GMs either.
Nope.
You cannot. Is looking the best he's ever looked.
Exactly. Any last little tidbits you wanted to hit on from the first 3 days, or should we wrap things up? Because first 3 days, I think those are the main takeaways I had.
Okay, so one minor takeaway. McManus hasn't missed a field goal yet.
Yeah. Yeah, 15 to 15 so far.
Is it 15 to 15 now? Okay.
Yeah, you had 10 to 10, but yeah, it was 15 to 15.
Added another 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which, that's a big change from a year ago.
Yeah, still missed that field goal in the playoffs, but I think this is definitely a better spot to be in than having what was it? Greg Joseph, Braden Narvison, Anders Carlson, James Turner, like just a rotating cast of characters at kicker last year.
It's we're 5 of 8. Is that
5
good
of
enough?
8? Solid 5 of 8? No, yeah, exactly. And so definitely a better place to be in this offseason than last. That's for sure.
But otherwise, I think we've touched on most of the things that are notable and some things that we just don't know anything about yet, like the D tackle room.
Yeah, I mean, other things like I think the quarterback 3 battle, like Clifford seems ahead of El
Gersma. Punt return.
Fiasco.
Where apparently, Was it Dontavian Wicks? Got it caught it right in the
well,
jug?
First Golden muffed it, and then Dontavian Wicks muffed it, and it hit him in the balls. So, yeah, that was not going great. But apparently, it wasn't set up correctly, was what Keyshawn
They were too far
was
away,
saying.
so they had to run up too far or something,
Which,
I heard.
Special teams, this is the kind of excellence I've come to expect from this unit.
Excellence.
Fantastic. We can't even set up the punt return drill correctly? What are we doing? But no, yeah, so... It is what it is. Do you remember, by the way, off the top of your head, who the guys that were lined up for returner were?
According to Matt Schneidman, at least on day 2 of practice, the Packers had Reed and Dobbs and Wicks and Hardman and Will Shepard and Golden, along with Keyshawn, returning punts, working on the punt return drills.
Yeah, I'd say Hardman's probably the favorite to win that job. He's done well at it before when he was in Kansas City. That makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, I think he'd be my favorite to have that job. And it seems like he's doing well enough as a kind of depth receiver that it would make sense to carry him as somebody who could do both.
Yeah. He's doing well enough at receiver to make the team, and then he's probably the best punt returner. So I feel like you're the most experienced punt returner at least, so that it makes sense. And then you don't want one of your main starters at receiver, in my opinion, taking that extra those extra potential hits and stuff.
Yeah, especially if somebody doesn't see you call fair catch.
Yeah, exactly.
Just comes flying in.
Exactly. Or you muff it a little bit and then you get crushed.
And you get
exactly
rocked. Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's pretty much it then for our coverage of the first 3 days at camp. I think we covered each position group at least as much as we could. With the lines, it's a little bit hard to tell without pads, like we mentioned, but. So that pretty much does it for the first 3 days. Not super eventful first 3 days, but we'll be keeping an eye on all the battles. And for you to keep an eye on all the battles, follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer. And then tune into us here, whether that's Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Give us a subscribe, hit the bell, leave a follow, leave a comment, leave a review. We'd appreciate it. Tell a friend. But we'll be here for the rest of the offseason doing an episode every single week, talking about training camp, talking about position battles, talking about roster moves, talking about preseason games. And then once the season kicks up in earnest, we'll be doing 2 a week, talking about, pre and post games for every single game. But anyway, keep the dial tuned here. Do they still have dials? Is that still a thing? But anyway,
don't touch that dial.
Don't touch that dial. But keep it tuned here for, everything Packers related. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.